Hey everybody, Bethany Dotson, a relationship coach and trauma sensitive yoga therapist for professional women who have been through a narcissistically abusive relationship or a pattern of those types of relationships and are seeking to break free from that. And also for women who are trying to reclaim themselves and overcome anxiety after an unhealthy or unfulfilling divorce. So, today I wanted to talk to you about how to create safe, emotionally available relationships when all you've known in your life are unfulfilling, typically pain producing relationships with men who ultimately can't give you what you need. And I want to speak to a couple of points here. Number one, a common theme that I see are women who exit a marriage or a long-term relationship. They take some time to lick their wounds and heal whatever it is. They might do some therapy in that time off. And then they fall for a partner who often feels right, feels incredibly amazing, has all the qualities that her ex was lacking, and then ultimately winds up being even more emotionally unavailable or sometimes emotionally abusive than her ex. So the pattern often gets worse. Another point that I want to mention is that a lot of people believe that, and I posted this earlier this week, a lot of people feel that you need to love yourself first in order to ultimately attract a healthy relationship. But the catch-22 here, the interesting dichotomy, is that most women who experience a lifelong pattern of not getting their needs met in intimate relationship don't know how to love themselves. And it's not that they aren't trying or they're not making any efforts. But the block here is that inevitably, on some level, subconsciously, they don't feel lovable. So how can you love yourself if subconsciously your beliefs are, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I have to work really hard to get my needs met. And keep in mind, your subconscious beliefs are 95% of your outcomes in life, not just in relationship, but your business, wealth, your bank account, your health. So learning to love yourself, and so many gurus and so many experts and so many advice relationship columns preach this, is like a drop in the bucket and often ineffective because a lot of people misconstrue what that word means. And meaning they think it just means, go take a retreat in Costa Rica, go take some time off to find yourself, go climb Machu Picchu, go work out and get in really, really great shape. And those things are not bad, right? A lot of times these things do us good, do good for our emotional well-being, but they don't heal a deeply rooted pattern. Learning to love yourself is often more complicated for women who have childhood trauma or prior relational trauma in the form of a narcissistically abusive ex or marriage or a pattern of attracting those types of relationships. So I want to talk to you about how you can be the person, be the type of a person that is ultimately a match for a safe, emotionally available partner. And it's interesting. I was just out with some girlfriends this weekend, and one of them, was sharing she's dating a great guy, very emotionally available for her, but she's having a hard time with it because it's different. He's very there for her. He's very emotionally available, and it just feels weird. And this was my own experience personally. And this has been the experience with some of my clients as well, is that when they begin to break the pattern of who they've previously attracted to, it's often uncomfortable. And this is one of the shifts. If you've watched my free presentation, Break the Cycle, my online masterclass, I talk more extensively about why it's crucial that you learn how to get uncomfortable and learn how to embrace being uncomfortable in the process of learning to attract an emotionally available partner. But I want to say that when you're in the middle of doing that, it's often going to feel not quite right, because what you've been doing in the past has felt right, even though it was dysfunctional, because it matches or matched your dysfunctional subconscious love blueprint or your subconscious programming. So in order to attract someone who's emotionally available, you have to be emotionally available. And oftentimes, many women don't realize how they are emotionally unavailable. A lot of women will get that distinction after they've been through a destructive relationship and they feel closed off, they feel jaded, they feel resentful, they're meeting all the wrong men still, they hate men, online dating sucks, men are assholes, whatever the case may be. Then they realize, okay, I've probably got a chip on my shoulder. I'm probably part of the problem here. But often the emotional unavailability has been with her for a long time. And that emotional unavailability stems from behaviors like people pleasing, like overachieving. Let me work really, really hard in my life to prove that I'm worthy, to prove that I'm lovable, to prove that I'm successful. When I see women who've had a pattern of some kind of childhood abandonment or childhood trauma, or a pattern of unfulfilling relationships, they tend to develop one of two ways. They become a high achiever, an overachiever. They work really, really hard. They lose themselves in their career. They lose themselves in work. Work tends to be the comfort zone. And they often attract less evolved, kind of issue-laden men who don't meet her where she wants to be. They are beneath her in some way. They haven't worked on their issues. They might have a drinking problem. They might have to get high every night in order to go to sleep. They complain a lot. They tend to be negative. In essence, they kind of drag her down a few rungs down the ladder. So that's one way that behavior can show up. The other way previous relationship trauma can show up in someone's life is through learned helplessness. So feeling like the world is against you, feeling like no matter what you do, you're doomed to fail. And sadly, I've worked with women who've been more in that vein as well. They settle for jobs that are soul-sucking, that drain them emotionally. They settle for men who look really, really great, really, really charming, but who drain them emotionally, who ultimately are not available for them. So oftentimes this shows up in one of two ways. And people pleasing, overworking, losing yourself in a job, turning to your job to distract yourself or to give you a sense of internal validation, meaning you're seeking your worth outside of yourself by all the hard work that you're doing, is in essence emotionally unavailable. Because often when you're seeking your worth outside of yourself, you're not being fully present with you. And most of the time, especially when I start working with someone early on, a lot of emotion tends to come to the surface in the first few weeks of working together, because they've been so trained to distract themselves, whether it's overworking or binge eating at night, or drinking a few glasses or a bottle of wine every night, or numbing themselves out in some form or fashion, shopping, right? Spending anything that they can do to get a quick dopamine fix to help them feel better and distract them from all of the pain that's going on in here, all of the feelings of, stuckness, anxiety, not feeling good enough. So one of the big ways to be emotionally available, so you then therefore attract a safe, emotionally available partner. One of the ways to be safe To attract a safe partner is for you to be safe within yourself. And the first way is learning how to develop that presence to your own emotions. And segueing into that, you have to heal properly past relational trauma. A lot of people will exit a marriage or a toxic relationship. And by that point, it's gotten really, really bad. And then they choose a therapist based on what their insurance can cover. But I think the statistic is 80% of clinicians aren't trauma informed. So usually what happens is that a clinician will diagnose someone as having anxiety, and then they'll put them on medication, or depression, they'll put them on medication, or they'll keep them talking about their past, connecting the dots to their childhood and why their childhood led to this partner and why it led to that partner and that partner in the past and why it's, blah, 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 blah. So they talk a lot about the past. When you talk about the past, you relive those emotions, and it kind of keeps you focused on the past, and where your focus goes, energy flows. So you're giving more of your emotional energy to your past, to the thoughts that you felt, the thoughts that you thought back then, the feelings that you felt back then. And you kind of keep yourself unknowingly, you might have really, really great intentions, but you keep yourself anchored into that identity as someone who fell for a narcissist, someone who fell for an emotional abuser, someone who married this person, thought it would work, and then wasted 10 or 15, not wasted, but spent 10 or 15 years of her life and is now beating herself up for making such terrible decisions. So you have to properly heal any relational trauma, and you need to do that ideally in a trauma-informed method. Something that uses your body, something that brings your body into the picture, because your body stores traumatic memory. Your body, we tend to shove emotions down. A lot of the people I work with, along with anxiety, have conditions like IBS or fibromyalgia or reproductive uterine fibroids or some kind of physical skin issues, eczema. Over time, when you are living in a heightened state of fight or flight, when you're kind of living in the rearview mirror, when you keep wondering why it happened to you, why your ex did this, why your ex did that, why after all the time that you took off that it happened again, why it has to be so unfair. When you start going down that road, you start kicking up your stress response. And for many, many people, especially the high achievers with this pattern, living stressed out is the norm. Living kind of in an anxious state is the norm. Your body becomes more comfortable with that than with being fully present and relaxed. So you have to learn how to heal your trauma effectively, and that requires the right support. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. The second thing that needs to happen in order for you to become an emotionally available magnet, beautiful woman magnet, and one who can create a safe relationship and develop that safety within yourself, is to stop settling. And I want to clarify what I mean by this. So when we undergo relationship trauma, it often fuels our subconscious beliefs that I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm separate. Why do other people seem to be getting it right and I'm not getting it right? What am I missing that they have? And we start to get in all kinds of comparison traps. We start to fear judgment of others. What if I say my truth? What if I speak up and then it's met with rejection? Or what if I say something? What if I say how I really, really feel and it's not met well? So we start to limit ourselves and we start to settle. We start to stuff our emotions. Settling often looks like staying in an overworking job, hiding in your work, having that fourth glass of wine every night, or having that extra brownie when you really know you shouldn't be doing that. Staying, zoned out on Netflix, or staying zoned out on your phone. Settling looks like, staying with someone, dating someone new, and ignoring the red flags, ignoring these little subtle things that are kind of pricking your intuition, but you don't really want to say anything, in order to feel safe. And the irony is that the behaviors and the actions and the choices that we choose to settle, we're doing it subconsciously to insulate ourselves from pain, to insulate ourselves from feeling unworthy. But over time, it creates more feelings. It perpetuates these feelings of unworthiness, these feelings of, there's something wrong with me. That's usually like one of the deep root beliefs that a lot of the women I work with have. They've tried so many things. They've gotten so far in life. They've gotten to a certain point. They usually have a lot of success in other areas, but the relationship piece tends to be this thorn in their side. It's a glaring flaw that they can't overcome. And in order to, the second piece of overcoming this pattern and learning to be emotionally available is to stop settling for the excuses and the stories you tell yourself. I made a post about this last week. I hear a lot of things like, it'll happen when it happens. If God wants me to have someone, then I'll have someone. I'm too old. My time, there aren't any good men my age. I need to do it. It's not the right time right now. I just need to do X, Y, and Z. And I want to draw the distinction that it is wise. And I always suggest taking time for yourself. But if you've been single for many years after a divorce or a destructive relationship, and you find yourself telling these stories again and again, and you dabble in dating only to be ghosted, only to meet guys that want you for sex, or only to meet more emotionally unavailable men, these are stories you're telling yourself to keep yourself safe and away from the pain that you're experiencing internally, and then to prolong facing that pain and to heal it. So you have to be willing to no longer buy into your own, for lack of a better word, bullshit stories. You have to draw a line in the sand and decide that you are not going to settle anymore. And not going to settle means telling yourself all of these things that aren't really healing the root problem, that are essentially keeping you stuck. Human beings love the comfort zone, right? This is like a general known fact, right? In human psychology, we want to kind of be in like what we know to be comfortable. Getting out of your comfort zone brings up a lot of scary feelings. And if you've got relationship trauma, it can be challenging to get out of your comfort zone, right? Your mind starts worrying about what could go wrong. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? So your mind goes in all different kinds of directions. When you learn to effectively heal and manage your past trauma and your emotions and your mindset, those voices don't rule your life anymore. You stop settling. And I want to read a quote really quickly. This is by Hal Elrod. And it says, every time, so when you settle for complacency, when you keep buying into the stories of, maybe it'll happen when it happens, or I'm too old, or there aren't any good men out there, you're doing the easy thing. And this is a quote, and I want to read it to you. Every time you choose to do the easy thing, and the easy thing for you could be overworking, distracting yourself with work, distracting yourself with nightly wine, it's distracting yourself with, dating again when you really don't need to be dating, when you just broke up with someone, or distracting yourself, trying to find something outside of yourself to make you feel better. Every time you choose to do the easy thing instead of the right thing, which is to properly bridge up those broken pieces within yourself and heal the brokenness, the toxic pieces inside of yourself, you are shaping your identity, and you become the type of person who does what's easy instead of what's right, which would be doing the inner work. And every time you ignore a red flag, this is what I wrote, every time you ignore a red flag, it's not just about the guy. Where else in your life are you ignoring red flags or ignoring your intuition? So you have to stop settling and buying your own bullshit story and start rewriting a new one. And that happens more effectively, a lot more quickly when you have the right trauma-informed support, when you're working with the right person. And again, a lot of people don't know what they don't know. They pick a therapist off their insurance card and hope for the best. And I can't tell you how many women I've spoken to, hundreds at this point, who have spent many months or many years, sometimes since college, their entire life basically in therapy, and they still make the same unhealthy choices and relationships, still repeat the pattern over and over and over again. So the third piece to attracting emotionally available relationships and breaking the pattern of narcissistic abuse, and even if you've never had a healthy relationship before, is to invest in the right support. Like I mentioned earlier, someone who is well-versed and understands deeply this subject, the link between childhood trauma, if you have it, or narcissistic abuse, if you've experienced it, and relationship trauma and how that is impacting or impeding your ability to have a successful, more fulfilling life and attract a healthy, emotionally available partner. Therapy focuses on your past. Typically, there's not a whole lot of structure. Typically, there's not a lot of how-to, right? So I always recommend therapy to people who've never had any kind of therapy and they've got a lot of unhealed emotional trauma. That's always a great starting point. Coaching is focusing about how to create healthier behavior and habits in the future. It meets you where you are, and it helps you subconsciously program new beliefs, which then leads to new choices and behaviors, which then lead to new habits. And the new habit that you develop in coaching replaces your old lifelong habit of falling for emotionally unavailable men, of people pleasing, of falling into codependency, trying to fix other people and losing yourself in the process. Coaching helps you to create sustainable change in your behavior moving forward. A lot of times people get into therapy because it's crisis mode, but then once crisis mode is over, they don't really know what to do after that, right? It just kind of becomes a support tool. And there's nothing wrong with support. We all need support as human beings. But I want to draw that distinction between therapy and coaching. Therapy is usually talking about the past, what happened from this point forward and behind you. And coaching is meeting you where you are in this point forward and talking about moving you into the future, giving you the tools, the subconscious beliefs, the choices, helping you develop that awareness, and helping you develop those habits. And most importantly, helping you when you meet resistance. Because we all know, just like if you were to hire a personal trainer or start a new diet or decide you want to go back to grad school or whatever the case may be, the moment you start to change and move out of your comfort zone, you are going to be met with resistance. And this is why a lot of people who've read books or watched videos, even like my videos, or watched YouTube videos, they often fail to implement changes. I think the statistic was 80% of people who read books don't implement any of the tools or strategies they read about. Why? Because you have decades of emotional and subconscious conditioning. And if left up to your own devices, you're going to want to do what you've been doing because it's an unconscious automatic habit. And so logically learning about the narcissist, logically learning about how to set boundaries is great, but you need accountability and you most often need some kind of professional support if this has been your lifelong pattern and you're serious about correcting it and not settling for less than, not ever knowing what a healthy relationship is like, not ever knowing what inner peace is like, not ever knowing what a life anxiety-free is like, right? So I invite you to consider what your life could be like if you weren't afraid of relationship, if you weren't worried about getting hurt. And so many people have this worry. If you weren't living your life from the lens of fear, of what if I open myself up to another partner and it happens again? What would your life be like if you stop living from the lens of fear of like, what if I decided to start this business and it fails? What would your life be like if you no longer lived with anxiety or no longer constantly questioned yourself or second guessed yourself or sabotaged your success because you secretly felt unlovable or secretly felt unworthy? And I invite you to consider that, because most people don't allow themselves to fully imagine and feel what that possibility might be like, because they're so used to feeling the rug being pulled out from underneath their feet. They're so used to feeling like waiting for the next shoe to drop, especially if they've been in bad relationships. But the only difference, and really the only thing that's blocking you from achieving that reality, is yourself, or your thoughts, or your beliefs. So if you're a professional woman and you are ready to lay aside any pain from the past, this could be emotional stuckness, anxiety, left over from a destructive relationship or divorce. You're ready to reclaim your identity. You're ready to be an emotionally available person so that you can eventually attract an emotionally available partner. And you want to get the steps and the strategy, the exact strategy on how to heal your relational trauma, your anxiety, your pattern of attracting narcissistic partners, then book a free breakthrough call and we'll talk about how to do it. So you can go to bethanydotson.com/talk. That's bethanydotson.com/talk. And we'll talk specifically about your struggles, why you don't think you've changed yet, what the missing pieces might be. And if we feel we can be the missing piece to get you from point A to point B, we'll show you what that process will look like. And at the same time, if we're not the right fit for you, if we don't feel 100% that we can help you get from point A to point B, we'll refer you to someone who can. We'll refer you to the next best step. So this is an invitation for professional women, probably overachieving, high achieving, who struggle with people pleasing, who struggle with settling for less evolved men, narcissistic men, and you're ready to break free from that pattern. And you eventually want to have a healthy relationship, but you don't know how. If that's you, then I invite you to book a free breakthrough call. So it's been my honor and my privilege to talk about, share this information with you. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below in the comment box and I'll circle back and answer you when I can. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and we'll talk soon.